Hello, happy Monday, distance learning day one, as you can see here. Hope you guys had an easy time of it. Easy as in it was easy to function, not easy to work. Because if it was easy work, I need to ramp that up a bit. I feel like today went really well in that the meeting this morning wasn't terrible. We'll get better at those. Um, and I had a lot of people coming to ask for help, which is exactly how I wanted it. People were doing it perfectly, coming in, hey, I have a question. I answered the question and then they left. I only had a few people who didn't show, but that's fine. I mean, I just assumed that they did it well and they had a fine time of it. Um, if something's not working properly, if you know you have the right answer and it's not working, let us know, because sometimes that's our fault in that sometimes we put the wrong thing in or we want something very, very specific in the Google Forms. I got everybody working on Wiser, I hope. I have figured out what was going on and why everything. You don't need a class code, you just gotta scroll down. That assignment is there. Just gotta scroll down. Anything else? Oh, I'm at my minute of announcements. So, read aloud. Chapter 14. My brother duels me to the death. The metal door was half hidden behind a laundry bin full of dirty hotel towels. I didn't see anything strange about it. But Rachel showed me where to look, and I recognized the faint blue symbol etched in the metal. It hasn't been used in a long time, Annabeth said. I tried to open it once, Rachel said. Just out of curiosity, it's rusted shut. No, Annabeth stepped forward. It just needs the touch of a half-blood. Sure enough, as soon as Annabeth put her hand on the mark, it glowed blue. The metal door unsealed and creaked open, revealing a dark staircase leading down. Wow. Rachel looked calm, but I couldn't tell if she was pretending or not. She changed into a ratty Museum of Art t-shirt and her regular marker-colored jeans, her blue plastic hairbrush sticking out of the pocket. Her red hair was tied back, but she still had the flecks of gold in it and traces of gold glitter on her face. So, after you? You're the guide, Annabeth said with mock politeness. Lead on. The stairs led down to a large brick tunnel. It was so dark I couldn't see 2 feet in front of us, but Annabeth and I had restocked on flashlights. As soon as we switched them on, Rachel yelped. A skeleton was grinning at us. It wasn't human. It was huge, for one thing, at least 10 feet tall. It had been strung up, chained by its wrists and ankles so it made a kind of giant X over the tunnel. But what really sent a shiver down my back was a single black eye socket in the center of its skull. A cyclops, Annabeth said. It's very old. It's not anybody we know. It wasn't Tyson, she meant. But that didn't make me feel much better. I still felt like it had been put here as a warning. Whatever could kill a grown cyclops, I didn't want to meet. Rachel swallowed. You have a friend who's a cyclops? Yeah, my half-brother, I said. Your half-brother? Hopefully we'll find him down here, I said. And Grover. He's a satyr. Oh. Her voice was very small. Well, then we'd better keep moving. She stepped under the skeleton's left arm and kept walking. Annabeth exchanged looks. Annabeth shrugged, and we followed Rachel deeper into the maze. After 50 feet, we came to a crossroads. Ahead, the brick tunnel continued. To the right, the walls were made of ancient marble slabs. To the left, the tunnel was dirt and tree roots. I pointed left. That looks like the tunnel Tyson and Grover took. Annabeth frowned. Yeah, but the architecture to the right, those old stones, that's more likely to lead to an ancient part of the maze towards Daedalus's workshop. We need to go straight, Rachel said. Annabeth and I both looked at her. That's the least likely choice, Annabeth said. Don't you see it? Look at the floor. I saw nothing except well-worn bricks and mud. There's a brightness there, Rachel insisted. Very faint, but forward is the correct way. To the left, farther down the tunnel, those tree roots are moving like feelers. I don't like that. To the right, there's a trap about 20 feet down, holes in the walls, maybe for spikes. I don't think we should risk it. I didn't see anything like she was describing, but I nodded. Okay, forward. You believe her? Annabeth said. Yeah, I said. Don't you? Annabeth looked like she wanted to argue, but she waved at Rachel to lead on. Together, we kept walking down the brick corridor. It twisted and turned. There were no more side tunnels. We seemed to be angling down, heading deeper underground. No traps? I asked anxiously. Nothing. Rachel knit her eyebrows. Should it be this easy? I don't know, I said. It never was before. So, Rachel, Annabeth said, where are you from exactly? She said it like, what planet are you from? But Rachel didn't look offended. Brooklyn, she said. Aren't your parents going to be worried if you're out late? Rachel exhaled. Not likely. I could be gone a week and they'd never notice. Why not? This time Annabeth didn't sound sarcastic. Having trouble with parents was something she understood. Before Rachel could answer, there was a creaking noise in front of us, like huge doors opening. What was that? Annabeth asked. I don't know, Rachel said. Metal hinges? Oh, that's helpful. I mean, what is it? I heard heavy footsteps shaking the corridor, coming towards us. Run? I asked. Run, Rachel agreed. We turned and fled the way we'd come, but we didn't make it 20 feet before we ran into some old friends. Two Dracene, snake women in Greek armor, leveled their javelins at our chests. Standing between them was Kelly, the impudent cheerleader. Well, well, Kelly said. I uncapped Riptide and Annabeth pulled her knife, but before my sword was even out of pen form, Kelly pounced on Rachel. Her hand turned into a claw and she spun Rachel around, holding her tight with her talons at Rachel's neck. Taking your little mortal girl pet for a walk? Kelly said. Kelly asked me. They're such fragile things. So easy to break. Behind us, footsteps came closer. A huge form appeared out of the gloom. An 8-foot tall Lastrygonian giant with red eyes and fangs. The giant licked his lips when he saw us. Can I eat them? No, Kelly said. Your master will want these. They will provide a great deal of entertainment. She smiled at me. Now march, half-bloods, or you'd all die here, starting with the mortal girl. It was pretty much my worst nightmare, and believe me, I've had plenty of nightmares. We were marched down the tunnel flanked by Dracene, with Kelly and the giant in the back, and just in case we tried to run for it. Nobody seemed to worry about us running forward. That was the direction they wanted us to go. Up ahead, I could see bronze doors. They were about 10 feet tall, emblazoned with a pair of crossed swords. From behind them came a muffled roar, like from a crowd. Oh, yes, said the snake woman on my left. You will be very popular with our host. I'd never gotten a good look at Dracene up close before, and I wasn't real thrilled to have the opportunity. She would have had a beautiful face, except that her tongue was forked and her eyes were yellow with black slits for pupils. She wore bronze armor that stopped at her wrist. Below that, where her legs should have been, two massive snake trunks, mottled brown and green. She moved by a combination of slithering and walking as if she were on living skis. Who's your host? I asked. She hissed, which might have been a laugh. Oh, you'll see. You'll get along famously. He's your brother, after all. My what? Immediately I thought of Tyson, but that was impossible. What was she talking about? The giant pushed past us and opened the doors. He picked up Annabeth by her shirt and said, You stay here. Hey! She protested, but the guy was twice her side and he'd already confiscated her knife and my sword. Kelly laughed. She had her claws at Rachel's neck. Go on, Percy. Entertain us. We'll wait here with your friends to make sure you behave. I looked at Rachel. I'm sorry. I'll get you out of this. She nodded as much as she could with a demon at her throat. That would be nice. The Dracene prodded me toward the doorway at javelin point, and I walked out onto the floor of the arena. I guess it wasn't the largest arena I'd ever been in, but it seemed pretty spacious considering the whole place was underground. The dirt floor was circular, just big enough that you could drive a car around the rim if you pulled really tight. In the center of the arena, a fight was going on between a giant and a centaur. The centaur looked panicked. He was galloping around his enemy using his sword and shield, while the giant swung a javelin the size of a telephone pole and the crowd cheered. The first tier of seats was 12 feet above the arena floor. Plain stone benches wrapped around all the way around, and every seat was full. There were giants, Dracene, demigods, telkines, and stranger things, bat-winged demons and creatures that seemed half human and half, you name it, bird, reptile, insect, mammal. The creepiest things were the skulls. The arena was full of them. They ringed the edges of the railing. 3-foot-high piles of them decorated the steps between the benches. They grinned from pikes at the back of the stands and hung on chains from the ceiling like horrible chandeliers. Some of them looked very old, nothing but bleached white bone. Others looked a lot fresher. I'm not going to describe them. Believe me, you don't want me to. In the middle of all this, proudly displayed on the side of the spectators' wall, was something that made no sense to me. A green banner with a trident of Poseidon in the center. What was that doing in a horrible place like this? Above the banner, sitting in a seat of honor, was an old enemy. Luke, I said. I'm not sure he could hear me above the roar of the crowd, but he smiled coldly. He was wearing camouflage pants, a white t-shirt, and a bronze breastplate, just like I'd seen in my dream. But he still wasn't wearing his sword, which I thought was strange. Next to him sat the largest giant I'd ever seen, much larger than the one on the floor fighting the centaur. The giant next to Luke must have been 15 feet tall, easy, so wide he took up 3 seats. He wore only a loincloth like a sumo wrestler. His skin was dark red and tattooed with blue wave designs. I figured he must be Luke's new bodyguard or something. There was a cry from the arena floor, and I jumped back as the centaur crashed to the dirt beside me. He met my eyes pleadingly. Help! I reached for my sword, but it had been taken from me and hadn't reappeared in my pocket yet. The centaur struggled to get up as the giant approached, his giant ready. A taloned hand gripped my shoulder. If you value your friends' lives, my Dracaena guard said, you won't interfere. This isn't your fight. Wait your turn. The centaur couldn't get up. One of his legs was broken. The giant put his foot on the horseman's chest and raised the javelin. He looked at Youth. The crowd cheered. Death! Death! Luke didn't do anything, but the tattooed sumo dude next to him rose. He smiled down at the centaur, who was whimpering, Please, no! Then the sumo dude held out his hand and gave the thumbs down signal. I closed my eyes as the gladiator giant thrust his javelin. When I looked again, the centaur was gone, disintegrated into ashes. All that was left was a single hoof, which the giant took up as a trophy and showed the crowd. They roared their approval. A gate opened at the opposite end of the stadium, and the giant marched out in triumph. In the stands, the sumo dude raised his hands for silence. Good entertainment, he bellowed, but nothing I haven't seen before. What else do you have, Luke, son of Hermes? I saw Luke's jaw tighten. I could tell he didn't like being called son of Hermes. He hated his father, but he rose calmly to his feet. His eyes glittered. In fact, he seemed to be in a pretty good mood. Lord Antaeus, Luke said, loud enough for the crowd to hear, you have been an excellent host. We would be happy to amuse you to repay the favor of passing through your territory. A favor I have not yet granted, Antaeus growled. I want entertainment. Luke bowed. I believe I have something better than centaurs to fight in your arena now. I have a brother of yours. He pointed at me. Percy Jackson, son of Poseidon. The crowd began jeering at me and throwing stones, most of which I dodged, but one caught me on the cheek and made a good-sized cut. Antaeus' eyes lit up. A son of Poseidon? Then he should fight well, or die well. If his death pleases you, Luke said, will you let our armies cross your territory? Perhaps, Antaeus said. Luke didn't look too pleased about the perhaps. He glared down at me as if warning me that I'd better die in a really spectacular way or I'd be in big trouble. Luke, Annabeth yelled, stop this! Let us go! Luke seemed to notice her for the first time. He looked stunned for a moment. Annabeth? Enough time for the females to fight afterward, Antaeus interrupted. First, Percy Jackson, what weapons will you choose? The Dracaena pushed me into the middle of the arena. I stared up at Antaeus. Antaeus, how can you be a son of Poseidon? Antaeus laughed, and the rest of the crowd laughed too. I am his favorite son, Antaeus boomed. Behold my temple to the Earthshaker, built from the skulls of all those I've killed in his name. Your skull shall join them. I stared in horror at all the skulls, hundreds of them, and the banner of Poseidon. How could this be a temple for my dad? My dad was a nice guy. He'd never asked me for a Father's Day card, much less somebody's skull. Percy, Annabeth yelled at me. His mother is Gaia. Her last Dragonian captor clamped his hand over her mouth. His mother is Gaia, the Earth goddess. Annabeth was trying to tell me that this was important, but I didn't know why. Maybe just because this guy had 2 godly parents. That would make him even harder to kill. You're crazy, Antaeus, I said. If you think this is a good tribute, you know nothing about Poseidon. The crowd screamed insults at me, but Antaeus raised his hand for silence. Weapons, he insisted, and then we will see how you die. Will you have axes, shields, nets, flamethrowers? Just my sword, I said. Laughter erupted from the monsters, but immediately Riptide appeared in my hands, and some of the voices in the crowd turned nervous. The bronze blade glowed with a faint light. "Round one!" Antæus announced. The gates opened and a Dracaena slithered out. She had a trident in one hand and a weighted net in the other, classic gladiator style. I trained against those weapons at camp for years. She jabbed at me experimentally. I stepped away. She threw her net, hoping to tangle my sword hand, but I sidestepped easily, sliced her spear in half, and stabbed Riptide through a chink in her armor. With a painful wail, she vaporized into nothing, and the cheering of the crowd died. "No!" Antæus bellowed. "Too fast! You must wait for the kill! Only I give that order!" I glanced over at Annabeth and Rachel. I had to find a way to get them free, maybe distract the guards. Nice job, Percy," Luke smiled. "You've gotten better with your sword, I'll grant you that." "Round two," Antæus yelled. "And slower this time! More entertainment! Wait for my call before killing anybody, or else!" The gates opened, and this time a young warrior came out. He was a little older than me, about 16. He had glossy black hair, and his left eye was covered with an eye patch. He was thin and wiry, so his Greek armor hung on him loosely. He stabbed his sword into the dirt, adjusted his shield straps, and pulled on his horsehair helmet. "Who are you?" I asked. "Ethan Nakamura," he said. "I have to kill you." "Why are you doing this?" "Hey!" a monster jeered from the stands. "Stop talking and fight already!" The others took up the call. "I have to prove myself," Ethan told me. "Only way to join up." And with that, he charged. Our swords met in midair and the crowd roared. It didn't seem right. I didn't want to fight to entertain a bunch of monsters, but Ethan Nakamura wasn't giving me much choice. He pressed forward. He was good. He'd never been at Camp Half-Blood as far as I knew, but he'd been trained. He parried my strike and almost slammed me with his shield, but I jumped back. He slashed. I rolled to one side. We exchanged thrusts and parries, getting a feel for each other's fighting style. I tried to keep on Ethan's blind side, but it didn't help much. He'd apparently been fighting with one eye for a long time because he was excellent at guarding his left. "Blood!" the monsters cried. My opponent glanced up at the stands. That was his weakness, I realized. He needed to impress them. I didn't. He yelled an angry battle cry and charged me, but I parried his blade and backed away, letting him come after me. "Boo!" Antæus said. "Stand and fight!" Ethan pressed me, but I had no trouble defending, even without a shield. He was dressed for defense, heavy armor and shield, which made it very tiring to play offense. I was a softer target, but I was also lighter and faster. The crowd went nuts, yelling complaints and throwing rocks. We'd been fighting for almost 5 minutes, and there was still no blood. Finally, Ethan made his mistake. He tried to jab at my stomach, and I locked his sword hilt in mine and twisted. His sword dropped into the dirt. Before he could recover, I slammed the butt of my sword into his helmet and pushed him down. His heavy armor helped me more than him. He fell on his back, dazed and tired. I put the tip of my sword on his chest. "Get it over with," Ethan groaned. I looked up at Antæus. His red face was stony with displeasure, but he held up his hand and put it thumbs down. "Get it!" I sheathed my sword. "Don't be a fool," Ethan groaned. "They'll just kill us both." I offered him my hand. Reluctantly, he took it. I helped him up. "No one dishonors the games," Antæus bellowed. "Your heads shall both be tributes to Poseidon." I looked at Ethan. "When you see your chance, run." I turned back to Antæus. "Why don't you fight me yourself? If you've got Dad's favor, come down and prove it." The monsters grumbled in the stands. Antæus looked around and apparently realized he had no choice. He couldn't say no without looking like a coward. "I am the greatest wrestler in the world, boy," he warned. "I have been wrestling since the first Pancration." "Pancratian?" I asked. "He means fight to the death," Ethan said. "No rules, no holds barred. It used to be an Olympic sport." "Thanks for the tip," I said. "Don't mention it." Rachel was watching me with wide eyes. Annabeth shook her head emphatically, the Lystragonian's hand still clamped over her mouth. I pointed my sword at Antæus. "Winner takes all. I win, we all go free. You win, we die. Swear upon the river Styx." Antæus laughed. "This shouldn't take long. I swear to your terms." He leaped off the railing into the arena. "Good luck," Ethan told me. "You'll need it." Then he backed up quickly. Antæus cracked his knuckles. He grinned, and I saw that even his teeth were etched with wave patterns, which might have made brushing after meals a real pain. "Weapons?" he asked. "I'll stick with my sword. You?" He held up his huge hands and wiggled his fingers. "I don't need anything else. Master Luke, will you referee this one?" Luke smiled down at me. With pleasure! Antius lunged. I rolled under his legs and stabbed him in the back of the thigh. Ag! He yelled. But where blood should have come out, there was a spout of sand like I'd brushed the side of an hourglass. Busted the side of an hourglass. It spilled into the dirt floor, and the dirt collected around his legs, almost like a cast.
Call incoming. Call in.
When the dirt fell away, the wound was gone. He charged again. Fortunately, I'd had some experience fighting giants. I dodged sideways this time and stabbed him under the arm. Riptide's blade was buried to the hilt in his ribs. That was good news. The bad news was that it was wrenched out of my hand when the giant turned, and I was thrown across the arena, weaponless. Antius bellowed in pain. I waited for him to disintegrate. No monster had ever withstood a direct hit from my sword like that. The celestial bronze blade had to be destroying his essence. But Antius groped for the hilt, pulled out the sword, and tossed it behind him. More sand poured from the wound, but again the earth rose up to cover him. Dirt coated his body all the way to his shoulders. As soon as the dirt spilled away, Antius was fine. Now you see why I never lose, demigod, Antius gloated. Come here and let me crush you. I'll make it quick. Antius stood between me and my sword. Desperately, I glanced to either side, and I caught Annabeth's eyes. The earth, I thought. What had Annabeth been trying to tell me? Antius's mother was Gaia, the Earth Mother, the most ancient goddess of all. Antius's father might have been Poseidon, but Gaia was keeping him alive. I couldn't hurt him as long as he was touching the ground. I tried to skirt around him, but Antius anticipated my move. He blocked my path, chuckling. He was just toying with me now. He had me cornered. I looked up at the chains hanging from the ceiling, dangling the skulls of his enemies on hooks. Suddenly, I had an idea. I feinted to the other side. Antius blocked me. The crowd jeered and screamed at Antius to finish me off, but he was having too much fun. Puny boy, he said, not a worthy son of the sea god. I felt my pen return to my pocket, but Antius wouldn't know about that. He would think Riptide was still in the dirt behind him. He would think my goal was to get to the sword. It wasn't much of an advantage, but it was all I have. I charged straight ahead, crouching low so he would think I was going to roll between his legs again. When he was stooping, ready to catch me like a grounder, I jumped for all I was worth, kicking off his forearm, scrambling up his shoulder like it was a ladder, placing my shoe on his head. He did the natural thing. He straightened up indignantly and yelled, "Hey!" I pushed off, using his force to catapult me toward the ceiling. I caught the top of a chain, and the skulls and hooks jangled beneath me. I wrapped my legs around the chain, and just like I used to do at ropes course in gym class, I drew Riptide and sawed off the chain next to me. "Come down here, coward!" Antius bellowed. He tried to grab me, but I was just out of reach. Hanging on for dear life, I yelled, "Come up and get me, or are you too slow and fat?" He howled and made another grab for me. He caught a chain and tried to pull himself up. While he was struggling, I lowered my sawed-off chain hook first. It took me 2 tries, but finally I snagged Antius's loincloth. "What?" he yelled. Quickly I slipped the free chain through the fastening link on my own chain, pulled it taut, and secured it as best I could. Antius tried to slip back to the ground, but his butt stayed suspended by his loincloth. He had to hold on to the other chains with both hands to avoid getting flipped upside down. I prayed the loincloth and the chain would hold up for a few more seconds. While Antius cursed and flailed, I scrambled around the chain, swinging and cutting like I was some kind of crazed monkey. I made loops with hooks and metal links. I didn't know how I did it. My mom always said I had a gift for getting stuff tangled up. Plus, I was desperate to save my friends. Anyway, within a couple of minutes, the giant was suspended above the ground, hopelessly snarled in chains and hooks. I dropped to the floor, panting and sweating. My hands were raw from climbing. "Get me down!" Antius demanded. "Free him!" Luke ordered. "He is our host!" I uncapped Riptide. "I'll free him!" And I stabbed the giant in the stomach. He bellowed, and sand poured out, but he was too far from the touch of the earth, and the dirt did not rise to help him. Antius just dissolved, pouring out bit by bit until there was nothing left but an empty swinging chain, a really big loincloth on a hook, and a bunch of grinning skulls dancing above me like they had finally something to smile about. "Jackson!" Luke yelled. "I should have killed you long ago!" "You tried," I reminded him. "Let us go, Luke. We had a sworn agreement with Antius. I'm the winner." He did just what I expected. He said, "Antius is dead. His oath dies with him. But since I'm feeling merciful today, I'll have you killed quickly." He pointed at Annabeth. Spare the girl. His voice quavered just a little. I would speak to her before our great triumph. Every monster in the audience drew a weapon or extended its claws. We were trapped. Hopelessly outnumbered. Then I felt something in my pocket, a freezing sensation growing colder and colder. My dog whistle. My fingers closed around it. For days I'd avoided using Quintus's gift. It had to be a trap, but now I had no choice. I took it out of my pocket and blew. It made no audible sound as it shattered into shards of ice, melting in my hand. Luke laughed. What was that supposed to do? From behind me came a surprised yelp. The last Dragonian giant who'd been guarding Annabeth flew past me and smashed into the wall. Aroof! Kelly the Ampusa screamed as a 500-pound black mastiff picked her up like a chew toy and tossed her through the air straight into Luke's lap. Mrs. O'Leary snarled and the two Dracena guards backed away. For a moment the monsters in the audience were caught completely by surprise. Let's go! I yelled at my friends. Heal, Mrs. O'Leary! The far exit! Rachel cried. That's the right way! Ethan Nakamura took his cue. Together we raced across the arena and out the far exit, Mrs. O'Leary right behind us. As we ran, I could hear the disorganized sounds of an entire army trying to jump out of the stands and follow us. Thus ends Chapter 14. Chapter 15 is We Steal Some Slightly Used Wings. It's a fun chapter. Also, Rachel. Gotta love Rachel. Rachel and the hairbrush. Hope you enjoyed. I will try to make sure that these things get put together correctly.